2 years ago, I walked into my first Volti room with present company excluded, from that particular room. I've thought a lot about like what I experienced that day, and I think that in all honesty, setting aside all hyperbole, the human emotion that I actually felt in that moment was fear. I've thought about this a lot, that there was something terrifying about sitting down and hearing something that was so gripping and just so vivid and lifelike. It was St. James Infirmary.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my moment. I mean, that was my moment to hear a system that worked so well that just, I was connected to music. It was something that was just unbelievable. And I've been able to do this show 2 years later with my brother and witness him experience all of these kinds of emotions that we've experienced at one point or another, being hi-fi enthusiasts. And now I feel very different. It's no longer fear. And I posted this on Facebook the other day when I came into this room and I heard the system. I said, and now I'm home. It's like, it brought me right back to that moment of experiencing something that I was able to connect with that initially kind of freaked me out because I'm like, whoa, I've been listening to a lot of speakers. Now I'm connecting with something that is huge, something that we all strive to try to achieve and recreate. So this is really an honor for me to be here, with you guys. I respect you guys, and you guys do a phenomenal job, Vinnie. I've had some time with the Leo, as you know, without the DHT module. And I think to open things up, I think the first question that I would want to ask you is like, what is it about Leo, right, that makes it unique? What is it that's different than everything else that's out there?
Yeah, it's a few things. When I started designing Leo, the idea behind it was borrowed from what I've been doing with Red Wine Audio. I was known for making battery-powered components. So when I first started, it was still lead acid batteries, and then from there, I went to the lithium. And my customers, everybody loved the fact that they didn't have to be dependent on the power grid, the quality of the power. So that was a really cool selling point for me, and something that people connected with. But there were limitations in that. One of them was people had that whole range anxiety, kind of like, well, how many hours can I listen?
Yeah.
And when it's time to replace the batteries, what do I do? Are you going to have them? Are you going to service it? Do I have to send it to you? And all along I was thinking, at one point, I got to find something to get me that isolation, to get me what battery does, but better. And I was experimenting. I learned about the ultracapacitor, also known as supercaps. It's if people don't know what these are, it's a type of capacitor with a graphene base inside that holds a lot of charge. I'm talking, the ones we use, they hold 350 farads, which is like a battery. It's not electrochemical like a battery, it's electrostatic. And then I started playing with those, and I was amazed how good they sound, because they have this super low output impedance. They're really high current. You get enough of those. I've seen videos on YouTube, people fooling around with them, arc welding, doing all crazy things. So I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I wanted to find a way to implement that. And I started thinking, well, these don't play as long as a battery, but if I could have another bank charging, unlike a battery, you could charge an ultracapacitor very quickly. It's not electrochemical, like I said, like a battery where you have to slowly charge.
Yeah.
Ultracap, you could charge nearly as hundreds of amps instantly. You could charge if you have a big enough supply.
Yeah.
So I knew I could charge these caps very quickly before the next bank needs to be swapped. So I'm like, now I need to have a switching algorithm. And through the days with Red Wine, I worked with John Chapman of Bent Audio for the remote control interface. He's a great guy from Canada. I knew he liked to program the microcontrollers and do control interfaces for OEM for other companies. So I approached him about this ultracapacitor idea, and he loved the concept. I'm like, John, while I'm working on different module design I've been working on for this. Can you write the firmware to handle the switching of the banks? So he took on that project and was helping me with that, and we had something proven that seamlessly switched between the banks. It's happening every 10 minutes or so, all automatic, and you can leave it running 24/7 if you want. So you don't have that range anxiety like I talked about, and but you get that isolation. You get that high current power. And the ultra caps are rated for 1 million cycles, so you don't have to change them, because you'll never get that many cycles on that cap for as long as you own the device.
It's safe to say then that the modular idea
that's number 2
is definitely unique. But I think just to lead into that, had you just done the modular idea, it would have been like, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But laying it on the correct foundation for me is what I think is what makes it so special.
Everything, gets powered from this. The modular idea is not something that I developed. I mean, there were other companies in audio that went modular. I know like NAD was a company that made home theater receivers, and they had modules for the video cards.
Yeah,
it's not,
right.
I'm not, I don't claim that it was my idea. I thought, though, this would be nice to make an interface, a platform product that no one in 2-channel hi-fi really does or hasn't been doing, and where customers could pick the options they want. Phono stage, DAC. Do they want a preamp? Do they want it integrated? They want it all.
Yeah.
It's up to them. Or if they don't want it all initially, but later, let's say they get into they pick up our turntable. Well, now they need a phono stage. They could have a module. They could purchase it, install it themselves. It's very easy. They don't need to send the unit back. So it makes the unit much more. It doesn't become obsolete.
Yeah.
It fights against obsolescence, where you don't need to sell the unit to get the next upgrade. With Redwine, every couple of years, I was coming out with a new version. A lot of my customers wanted the upgrade, and I would try to offer that service, but it was difficult because I had to ship the unit, be without it for a few weeks, sometimes even longer. I have to ship it back. With this, they could really just purchase the new module, 30-day home trial, compare it to what they had. Do you like it better? You keep it. If you don't, it's easy to swap out and return.
Yeah.
So it's the flexibility for the customer is what makes it really unique.
Pete, cables can get a bad rap in hi-fi, right? We all agree.
Absolutely.
Right? You have this dividing line of, let's not talk about cables at all, and then you have people like, why not? Yeah, of course cables make a difference. Before I ask you this question, I want you to know that I was very skeptical about cables long before I did New Record Day and got into it, but I was open-minded enough to say, well, why wouldn't I just give this a shot? And when I did hear a difference, I was like, okay, well, this conversation is now over for me, right? Setting aside any kind of slippery slope conversations about cables, how did you start Triode Wire Labs? What got you interested in moving in that direction? And
Well, about 20 years ago, I've done a lot of do-it-yourself cabling, and I did my own little power cable. Started on a digital cable for a CD player, and it was okay. And then about 10 years ago, I was at a New York audio rave meeting where there was a new manufacturer there, and he brought some of his power cables. I go, okay, this should be interesting. And I was just gobsmacked at the difference his power cables make.
Yeah.
In a system. That was like night and day difference. It's like everybody heard the difference. It was that obvious. And I was on a mission after that.
Yeah.
The cables I made 20 years ago, they were maybe subtly better, but not significant.
Yeah.
So I went on basically an R&D mission. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I just went into the books and just tried everything on cable theory, capacitance, impedance, all the different resistance. And what I found is I found a material and a geometry, a way of manufacturing the cables that sounded great.
Yeah.
And I had some friends from actually the New York Audio Rave and various audio clubs try them out. They were just said, wow, you're onto something. You got to start a company. And that's how Triode Wire Labs began about 7 years ago.
Follow-up question to that. This is something that I'm wondering, it's like, should a cable color the sound? Like, should it color the sound? And as a follow-up question, like, if you end up with a cable that you feel is providing more detail in your system, how would you walk through that kind of a situation?
Well, first off, a cable should get out of the way.
Yeah.
It should provide a very natural, organic presentation. At the same time, give you plenty of prat. That's pace, rhythm, and timing. And it should really just sound natural, organic. It should get out of the way. It should be completely neutral, but do a great job at being neutral.
Yeah.
So that's my design goal in my cables.
Perfect.
I can make a cable sound very detailed sounding through either geometry or different materials.
Yeah.
Just the connectors alone. I can make a cable sound overly detailed and hi-fi sounding. There's a lot of hi-fi sounding cables out there, but that's just not for me or I believe my customers.
Yeah. All right, big guy.
Go ahead.
Tone, right? I can't help but think that you're a tone guy. You know?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's
Tone
like,
first.
what's that?
Tone first.
Tone first. So walk me through that. Like what? Because it could mean it's subjective, right? It might mean something totally different to me than it does to you. But as a speaker designer that has made one of my favorite speakers on the planet, what does tone mean to you?
Well, tone, for me, it's what I hear in music. Now, that's a bit cliched, but it is true. And every speaker designer is going to have a different sound in their head, what they think the tone should be, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's just about what I hear in music. If I hear a saxophone playing, I listen to it, and that's what I'm chasing out of my speaker. That's what I'm trying to get out of that speaker. And so there's a balance. There's always a balance in tone. That's one of the things that I'm trying to do is to make sure that the lows, the mids and the highs are in the correct balance, not flat necessarily.
Sure.
But then what I believe is the balance that I'm looking for, in my sound. And then within that, it's the tone is something that it can very easily get skewed as you're trying to work the crossovers. It can very easily get skewed away from where you want to be, trying to correct something else.
Yeah.
And that's what's tough about it. Mm-hmm. So there's that balance, and then there's just making sure that in the end, when you're done with the crossover work, that it really is conveying that sense of the real instrument to the listener.
Yeah.
And that, because there's something about when you're listening to live music, there's something about what you're hearing that is engaging the listener.
Yeah.
It makes it. That's why you go hear a live performance, and I want those same characteristics out of my speakers.
Follow-up question to that. Why horns?
Why horns? Well, besides the fact that I owned horn speakers when I was 14 years old, I mean that's a pretty formative time in your life when you're 14 years old. So if you've got a big pair of horn speakers sitting in your basement, you're pretty much done for, I think, at that point. But why? Okay, so why horns? Well, for me, there's nothing more engaging or exciting than listening to a pair of horn speakers. When it comes to reproducing music, horns just grab your attention right away.
Yeah.
Now, do they keep your attention for a period of time, right? Because they can be really all horns, I think, are really exciting at first because they just have those elements about them that are so live sounding. But then, how about after half an hour? How about after 30 days?
They keep you engaged.
Exactly. Do they keep you engaged, or is it? Or now all of a sudden you're saying, "Oh, geez, what is that?" I've got this something about it that's not quite right now, and I have to change it. And that's the downfall to horns, is that they can be really tricky to design around. There's some vices, in most horn speakers that you have to work around as a designer.
One last quick question for you. I think that it's important that we point out you don't just offer these stunning speakers. You also do upgrades for folks that do already have Klipsch speakers. Is it certain models, or what does that look like?
The upgrade thing is really how it all started for me, because I didn't have my eye on being in business, building speakers.
Yeah.
15 years ago. I owned a pair of Klipsch corner horn speakers. Had them my whole life, and really enjoyed them in their stock form. But then as I matured, I think as an audiophile, if there's such a thing, I'm not sure if an audiophile can be called mature.
Yeah.
And
A bunch of geeky guys walking around listening to speakers.
There's other adjectives.
Yeah, there's
We are
certainly
very
other
mature.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Our wives agree with us. Yeah.
I just, I got back in. I got back into it. It was maybe 2000, 2001 or something. I sort of got back into the hobby a little more seriously and realized that there was a lot of shortcomings, you know, with my K horns. They just weren't doing it for me anymore. And I thought, I wonder if I can make them better.
Yeah.
And there was already a couple guys out there doing some upgrades, and I bought them and tried those upgrades, and of course I did all the other things, you know, trying different amplifiers, cables, all kinds of things, you know, to try to fix the things.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really did it, when I switched to a 2-inch throat horn, you have to understand the Klipsch K horn mid-range horn has an 11/16 of an inch opening.
Yeah.
In the horn.
Yeah.
Quite small.
Yeah.
And when I switched to a full 2-inch throat horn that I built myself and put in my K horns, it was just night and day. It was like, wow, that by far that was the best thing I'd ever done to make those speakers sound better. And that is, you know, and again, I still wasn't planning on being in business. It's just that I was on the Klipsch forum and I was showing off my work. Say, hey, I just built these horns. They sound really great. Well, guess what happened? Hey, Greg, can you build me a pair? Right? Second guy comes, can you build me a pair? Well, I guess if I'm going to go build a couple pair, I ought to build 10, right?
Yeah.
That's how it started. You know, next thing I know, I'm selling horns right and left.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, you know, so I had done all this work on making a Klipsch K horn sound so much better that it was really easy to take what I had done there and move it into my own design of a speaker.
I got a good question for you, Pete.
Okay.
Somebody is at the point where they're like, okay, fine, I'm going to buy some cables. I want to give this an open-minded shot and see what happens. Is there a particular cable that you feel might make the biggest sonic difference? Should they start with speaker cables? Should they start with interconnect? Should they do power cords? What would that look like?
I would highly suggest doing a power cable.
Okay.
First off, it's really easy to do quickly, and you can A/B it almost instantaneously. It doesn't take long to unplug an IEC, plug it in to either a power conditioner or to the wall, and hear the difference. And to go a little bit more into detail, if you like to try it on a certain component, I would say try it on your preamp first.
Okay.
And I think you'll hear quite a bit, not only a difference, but an improvement in sound quality.
It's good. Follow-up question I want to ask you. Who would buy the Obsession, right, or the Silver Statement over your American Series power chords, and why?
Well, the reason I made the Statement series of power chords, the Obsession and Silver Statement, were from customer requests.
Yeah.
There was quite a few customers who spent a lot of money, upwards of $10,000 on a power chord, that they heard my American Series, and they go, wow, Pete, I have this $10,000 power chord, and the American Series comes so close,
Yeah.
you know, at 1/20th the cost or whatever, and they said, what can you do to make that better? And so I did a lot of research and came up with an Obsession, which uses the top-of-line Furatech FI 50M connectors, which are very expensive.
Yeah.
And then a lot of my customers are really into silver. So I ended up finding a great Iego. It's a made in Taiwan, pure solid silver connector with a carbon fiber connector outer base I used on it, and it just two different sounds. The topology on both statement chords is basically the same, but the connectors are different.
Okay.
To give you a little bit more, how can I say, a little bit more bass, a little bit more effortless highs,
Yep.
while still staying very balanced like the American Series.
Okay.
It just gives you a little bit more of the extremes.
Okay. Vinnie DHT, direct heated triode, for people that don't really know what that is. For the Leo customer that's like, let's just get straight to the point. If I decide to go with the DHT module, what can I expect? What am I going to hear? Tube rolling, kind of walk somebody through what is this going to do for the Leo user?
Sure. Well, I found with the directly heated Triode family, the 4 pins that I've been using, the 283, 300B, this is an 811, and there's a few others that'll work. They have a way more sense of space, scale, much more texture than I was able to get out of the 9-pin type. I think when you hear a directly heated Triode, it sounds like no other tube. They have really good bandwidth, tone galore, harmonics. It's a tube that, to me, makes everything sound more real. There's a sense of realism that you just can't get with other tubes. They're more commonly used in SET amplifiers as a power output tube. I went ahead and decided to try to do this in the line stage, which is tricky because in the line stage, they're very prone to picking up all kinds of noise. Because
we have a 300B that's noisy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's what I wanted to do is the reason why I wanted to do it in the line stage is because it works the tube a lot less hard. So there's no output transformer. There's no requirements to drive a speaker anymore. There's no driver tube before the output tube. This is the only tube. So because it's the most minimal circuit, Class A, no feedback, no output transformer, you're really hearing the tube for all it is. So if you want to hear what a directly heated Triode sound is all about in the line stage like this, you'll get that. Because we have such a clean power supply circuit, you're not going to pick up that noise. I had a company called Bellison who makes a patented super regulator circuit, meaning it regulates, linear regulates down to the microvolt level. Design a custom linear regulator for the filament for me, which is convertible, where we could switch between 2.5 volt for 283s and 45 tubes, 4 volt, and even 5 volt. So
that changes the filament voltage, right?
Because you can't just put 5 volts into a 283. You're going to cook the filament.
Is the DHT module available now? If somebody decides to get them, what is the cost of the DHT module, and when can they expect orders at this point?
Last month we opened it up to pre-orders. I first showed it at the Exponus show, and then I opened it up to pre-orders about a month ago, and now I'm about 6 weeks backlogged on those. I received more orders than I anticipated with this, and part of it is, like anything with Leo, when a customer wants to upgrade from a previous module, like the one with the 6922s, like if you're reviewing, they could trade that in.
Yeah. And
they don't lose a dime. They get the latest module. So a lot of previous Leo customers, went ahead with it. And I reached out to a whole new group of people who wanted to see a DHT preamp, or maybe had another companies in the past had problems with noise, and hopefully, this time they're going to really hear it in a new way.
Awesome.
So the cost of that is $6,000. That includes the DHT module, external power supply. There's a new top panel which has the holes for the tube machined. There's even tube covers that go with it. I don't have here. They're on their way though from the pre-orders they're being made for those who are worried about children, pets. They could be covered. It even helps if you have a tube you roll in that is higher output impedance. It picks up maybe some hum. It'll block all that.
So if we have, a tube that is noisy, right? How are you able to do it to where, with your Leo, how is it that you're working with that, and why is yours any different than anybody else that would be trying to, manipulate that and bring it into a preamp section?
Okay, one reason is the powering the anode of the tube. We're using the ultracapacitor power supply, which isolates from the wall. So it's not going to pick up hum from power supply transformers nearby, because there are none. The external device that charges the caps is external to the whole unit. So we're not picking up that kind of noise. When we worked with Bellison on the super regulators for the filaments, I specified regulators that are very high quality, low noise, patented regulators that I don't know if there's anybody else who makes a regulator this quiet, state of the art. So because the filaments now see the cleanest supply as well, they're less likely to pick up noise. But if the tube itself, has a higher tube rush factor, they call, when it's you pick up some noise in the tube naturally from the electrons flowing from cathode to anode. Yeah, I mean, you could still, with Greg's 104 dB speakers, you put your up to a tweeter, you could hear a little bit of that, but nowhere like you would expect in a line stage. We could minimize it.
Greg, tell me about the workmanship of a Volti audio speaker. I remember in past conversations, there's a lot that goes into these things. Walk us through a little bit what that looks like.
There's a lot. There's 250 hours of labor to do a set of these, and I do just about all of it myself. There's some specialized things that we do. I mean, I build the curved panels, for instance, are done in a vacuum bag. We're actually laminating those, making our own curved plywood, basically, for the sides of these things, 1 inch thick. Yeah. And the veneering, for instance, is all done in the vacuum bag as well.
Yeah.
And that's not something you usually see, especially building the cabinet, this size cabinet, and putting it in the vacuum bag to veneer it after it's built. It's a little tricky, some things you have to be. I had to learn, frankly. I just really had to learn how to build these speakers. And so the workmanship I've been told it's pretty good overall, the finished work and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty picky about it, so.
Furniture grade, heirloom quality.
Yeah, the heirloom furniture.
Yeah, it's anal retentive. It's
down
perfect. Yeah,
to many generations.
yes, flawless.
Awesome.
At least in our eyes, maybe not his. But
I know where every flaw is.
Yeah.
So I'm humbled by it, frankly. When I first came to these shows, I remember the first show I went to. I thought, geez, I hope this is good enough. I hope it actually works. Because. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Even today, going around looking at some of the speakers, some of the stuff that's done out there is pretty nice. There's some finished work that I'm not capable of doing that I see around here. So I still think I have some more I can do to this.
That's a humble attitude to have. I like that.
Yeah. Well,
because I think they look gorgeous. Absolutely. Yeah.
And one thing I'll say about the finished work, it's really important to me to when a person walks up to my speakers, I want them to know right away that it's wood.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want any second guessing about what's that shiny finish. Is it real wood or is it
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's when I'm spraying the finish on, I'm real cognizant of that. I want to make sure that when I'm done with it, it's the finish is in the wood, not covering, not over the wood.
Not some plasticky kind of.
And you can see that when you look at this, you take a look at it, you'll actually see the grain of the wood.
Yeah,
the finish is down in the grain.
I love it.
And that's just something that's important to me to make sure I do that. And I'll address another thing about workmanship. I will never use MDF in my speakers.
Okay.
I've had too many old speakers come into my shop that when I've done some restoration work, MDF speakers, 30 years old, coming apart.
Yeah.
Just coming apart. They're done. That's it.
Yeah.
And I want my speakers to last a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So I use Baltic birch plywood. It's more expensive. It's harder to work with, but in the end, I got something that I know is gonna, it's going to the next generation and beyond.
That's good.
So, yeah.
I didn't know that, so that's really good to know.
It's durability. It isn't. There's a practical side to it. It isn't just making something beautiful. I want to make it beautiful and durable and long lasting.
Yeah, if somebody's going to make that kind of investment, enjoy the speakers, you want them to enjoy it for as long as they possibly can.
Absolutely, yeah. And you look at this cloth. That is a really nice cloth. I'm fortunate that I can get that kind of cloth even.
Yeah.
And that's gonna last. How do I know that'll last 50 years? Because I had 50-year-old K-horns coming into my shop that had that cloth on.
Yeah. Pete, you often pair up with Volti Audio. As long as I've known you, you've been hanging out with this knucklehead over here, right?
Yep.
And now we have Vinnie in the mix, and rabbit ears over here. When it comes to putting these systems together and working with them, what is it that attracts you about this system that you're going, I want to use my cables on this? What is it about it?
It's pretty simple. It's synergy.
Yeah.
It just synergistically works very well together. You know, as your earlier question asked about my cabling, they're neutral. They get out of the way. They work extremely well. I think they're very balanced sounding. Like I said earlier, plenty of we have pace, rhythm, timing going on, and just working with these two guys.
Yeah.
It's just they're just highest caliber of people I know, high integrity, honest as can be.
Yeah.
And it's just a pleasure working with them. I hate
Yeah.
to be telling you this then in front of them, but
Yeah.
it's
Rolling
the truth.
us up
You know,
pretty
the
good.
truth
Yeah.
hurts sometimes.
This is
so.
not what they were saying about you.
Yeah, I know. I figured that
But
much.
thanks, Pete. Anyway, we appreciate the comments.
That's great.
I would say the same thing though. I mean, why do we choose to?
Yeah, you know what?
to
That's
bring Pete in.
why don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. The first few shows I did, we sort of had a mishmash of cables, and we did fine with that. But what a difference, when you have a full loom of cables from one manufacturer, using the same ears, on every cable, and they are neutral. They really are.
Yeah.
And so it really stepped our game up. When we started using Triode Labs cabling.
Yeah.
Real noticeable. And so there's a testimonial, because I think listeners listening to watching this video and listening to this, you should know that if you're replacing your cables with Triode Labs, you are likely going to see a real improvement in the overall system quality. Yeah, with it.
And they're affordable.
Well, yeah, and
True.
I guess that's another thing too, because Pete mentioned synergy. It isn't just synergy between the cables and speakers or the cables and the Leo. It's synergy in the way we do our business. Because the three guys you have here are all sort of doing business the same way. We're artisan manufacturers selling direct to our customers, and so that kind of business model, I think, is something. It's important to me to make sure that everything in the room kind of fits together that way.
Yeah.
By hand, USA.
Yeah.
Made in USA, we're proud of it, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that speaks a lot about, it makes me think about something. As we've talked about, when I hear your speakers, I'm ruined. They are home for me, right? You as a speaker designer, as you listen to your own speakers, that's one thing, but I've always wanted to know, like, for you, are there other speakers, are there guys out there that you're going, I really like what that guy is doing? What the heck is that guy? What is he doing over there?
What's
Like,
he
I
building
really,
in there?
or yeah, right. Or are you at a point where it's kind of desensitized, where it's like, yeah, you know what, I've seen it all, I've done it all, and I'm good to go, and leave me alone with your hogwash over there. What is it like for you?
No, I certainly haven't seen it all, heard it all. No, I'm not desensitized. I am. I'm surprised sometimes, I guess, when I go to these shows, how few other speakers I do actually really like. Overall, I can sit down and say, geez, I really love what I'm hearing here. It doesn't happen that often. But that's not because what they're doing is bad. It's not because it's just because it's not my thing. It's just not really what I'm searching for.
your
when
preference.
Yeah, preferences. And everybody has that,
Yeah.
I don't expect every single person walking into this room at a show to really love what we're doing.
Yeah, that one guy that comes in and then he goes back out.
It
You're like,
happens.
well, we lost him.
No problem with me. That's fine. I don't need to please everybody.
Yeah.
I need to connect with a few customers, a few really good customers a year. That's what I've got to do.
Yeah.
And so when I go listen to other speakers, I guess, I'm certainly listening for what's good in them, and I'm trying to think, well, is there something that I can do, along the lines of what they're doing, maybe bring it into what I'm doing a little bit. That does happen quite a bit, especially when I go listen to other horn speakers. If I hear something I really like, I'm thinking, I like the dynamics in that. Maybe I should, try to work that in a little bit into a design. So that's always going through my mind.
Cool.
But honestly, I am surprised at how few speakers I go listen to. And I say, wow, that's fantastic, And it isn't always horn speakers.
Interesting.
No, I very often will sit down and listen to. I listened to some open baffle speakers today, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty far away from what I'm doing, and yeah, they were just fantastic. The mid range to me was very, very much to my liking. Exactly what I was looking for in the mid range.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, Desensitized? No. Hurt at all? No. Certainly not. Gonna keep going out there and listening and
Keeps you thirsty for it, right?
Man, I'll tell you, I'm not done.
Yeah.
I'm not. There's a lot more coming, for Volti Audio in the future.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Does a crossover matter as much as drivers? Is
More.
it
I would say more.
more?
Drivers, yeah. If you're using a passive crossover in a speaker, it is probably the most important part of designing a speaker is the crossover.
You got to get that right.
It's the final voicing. You know?
Yeah.
Your drivers, like for a horn speaker, your driver horn combination will get you it to a certain point. And then you have to use the crossover to tune each component of the speaker together. And it's the hardest part and it's the most critical part of the design is the crossover.
When John and I were walking out earlier, he's like, dude, that David Bowie sounded really good on that system. And I'm like, yeah, it sure did.
These guys like to take risks. I love that. I love when they can throw. We have fun. We'll even try something that we know it's a poor recording.
Yeah.
People like to play it live. You just play it and see what it can
Our
do.
advertisement
Let it
is
go.
bring your music and have fun. Bring
Yeah.
your music. We'll play it for you.
That's what I
No
find
fear.
strange with when I read about show reports and people who've been through the rooms and they find a vendor doesn't let them play what they want.
They're offended by that.
Yeah.
It's like
There's a lot of them out there.
give me
It's
your
shocking.
CD, give me your USB stick, give us your LP.
Yeah.
What it's your show. I mean,
Yeah.
we're here to let people listen and see what it sounds like their music on this system.
Yeah.
So it's also frustrating, at least for me, when people are looking for something so specific. Do you have this and this? It's like, why don't you bring your music? Bring a little USB stick of songs, a CD, an LP, just something that you know. And they're looking for something very specific. I want an arrangement like this with a little bit of orchestral, a little bit of a harp in the background. It's like, bring it. We'll play it.
Ron,
Little string quartet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron, I wish I could take every single person that's walking out in these halls, right, one at a time, sit them down in the sweet spot, put on a song that they like, right, quiet for 10 seconds, quiet, press play, give them the experience all the way through that song to the end, to the very last note plays. That's an experience that they can have at home.
Give them the remote. Just let them get the volume they like, the song they like, and enjoy it. Wow, it's just strange to me why, with these shows, that's something that has to change. I think in audio where it's so strict. I see, I walk by rooms, these guys wearing suits. They're wearing suits and ties, and like you can't bring your music, and they don't want to play it. It's like I won't play that. I'm only going to play this for you.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point of the show?
Yeah.
This is fun because we have guys
We're
that
having
bring
fun.
all sorts of stuff, and we had rap, and we play it all, and it's.
Vinny had his gangster rap going.
Yeah. Hardcore gangster rap for Vinny over
Why
here.
not? I mean, it's people sometimes they come in the room and it's like, finally, why can't anybody play rap with these shows? Why can't anybody play some
Rock and
metal?
roll.
Yeah.
ZZ Top.
Not the whole show. I mean, but throw it in and we'll
Let's
move
have
on.
some fun.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
throwing.
And we'll crank up the volume a little bit too.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one more question, Vinny.
Sure.
25 watts per channel in your MOSFET module? Is
Yeah.
that 25 watts?
Into 8 ohms.
Into 8 ohms.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard that at my house.
Yeah.
I have a functional understanding of what 25 watts should be able to do, and then I have your system. And I want to ask you, like, how much longer do you think you can go on, not being arrested for putting crack inside a Leo? Because
Well, I'll have that slidable
there's no
top
way.
cover. Yeah. The top cover slides. You can just store it in. Well, when it comes down to
I mean, I've
watts,
already called the authorities, so, I mean.
That's why I got to get back home tonight. Yeah. Well, when it comes to watts, I think a lot of people don't understand that twice the wattage is not twice the level, the volume level, the SPL. It's a logarithmic scale,
Yep.
so when you double your power, you're only getting 3 more decibels of headroom.
Yeah.
And it's not just the watts, because you could have a high power amp with high wattage running on higher voltage rail that doesn't have current. The power supply just can't provide it's choked. It doesn't have it to begin with, and it just crumbles under impedance dips in the speaker. Challenging music. It just chokes up and it collapses. And I get that a lot for customers saying, "Oh, I had 125 watt per channel amp. Why is it that this could play just as loud for me?" And part of it is, the speakers, are they sensitive? But even if they're not, are you really playing at levels ever where you're using up that kind of wattage? Are people really monitoring the wattage they're using? It could be that, they're in an apartment or a room where they don't really need that power.
Yeah.
And if you don't need the power, I'm the type of person that I like to see a design that uses fewer stages, fewer parts. If you don't need that, don't put it in. If you do, then that's great. If you need more power, certain speakers need it. You want to really rock it. You have a big room, challenging room, absorbs a lot of sound. You're going to want power, but just the current behind the watts that matter, how it handles the speakers, complex loads of speakers. That's more important than just the number. A speaker is not a resistor. It's not like you're playing and hooking up an 8 ohm or a 4 ohm resistor. You're challenging the amplifier with a very complex load. You're not just using a sine wave. It's like the whole measurement versus listening. There's a sine wave test, yeah, but when you're playing music through it to a challenging load, it's got hundreds and thousands of superimposed sine waves all at once.
Yeah.
It's more to it than that, and just because you can't measure it doesn't mean there's not differences there, and those are important. So sometimes you just really need to try it and listen and see how it goes before you judge the number, or before you judge the classification. Class D, Class A. There's a lot of bad sounding A, there's a lot of bad sounding D, and there's some great ones of each as well. A lot of people, I think, want to generalize in this hobby, I find. Because I get phone calls about that all the time. Well, do you think, I should have a multi-way driver, full range, Class A? It's like, they're all good, and there's a lot of them that are not so good. You don't generalize it because of its class,
the
design. You go out and listen to it.
Yeah.
There's really good tube amps. There's really not so good tube amps.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, unless you actually sit there and listen, you can't just say, I've heard one of those before with 300B tubes. Not for me. It's like, that one was not for you. That system was not for you. But not the whole class of that tube amp or that kind of speaker. So that's important.
I experienced this show again with my brother, and it was his very first show. And I wanted to step out of the way and let him hear everything without me saying a word, without me influencing anything at all.
So why was it before that you came into our room, I heard you whispering how bad it's going to sound?
Yeah, I was like, this is... Exactly. And as I predicted, there's stuff that you see in magazines, and there's high dollar, high ticket stuff that, you think is going to be amazing.
Yeah, over the top.
Over the top, And halfway through, he's like, when you first sit down, you're just like, wow, I'm looking at these giant speakers, and it's got to be great. And then as you sit there and you kind of just let yourself go for a minute and start listening, it's like, it's neat. There's some neat things about it. When we got to this room, I was really excited, and I wanted to see, what is he going to say? As we walked out, he's like, man, that just sounded like music. It's like Thanksgiving, it's just like, this is just welcoming, and I like those guys, they're easy to talk to. I don't have this kind of pompous attitude or anything like that. And I think that speaks to a lot about who you guys are as individuals that breathe life into the companies that that you run. It really does. So I'm not, in the past, when I was doing the shows, is like, well, I'm going to give them some kind of award. I'm going to do some thumbs up and anything like that. It's like, I'm not going to do that, because the reality is that what I like might not be what somebody else likes that's watching this. But
people will discover it for themselves.
That's exactly right.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And
Give them an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's like, here we have Vinnie, who has truly, and I'm using the word correctly and a lot of people don't, you have a unique product.
Thank you.
You really do. I've never seen anything like it. Without giving what I feel in the review away, what you're doing is so beneficial to people that I think follow New Record Day, that we have this situation with hi-fi, this, I gotta buy this, I gotta buy that, I gotta buy this, I gotta buy that, like you were talking about before. and you have this
challenging.
idea that is unique, and it's an answer to that issue. It's an answer to that problem. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
We have Pete, one of the nicest guys in the freaking industry by far.
Oh,
And-
remember that, Vinny?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess he is. He's alright.
But more than that, you have cables that I absolutely, without question, feel like they do exactly what you say they do. I have in my listening room, I have all my cables up on the wall, you know, and when I reach for your cables, it's like I want these cables to get out of the way. And that is exactly what I hear. So the claim that you're making is exactly what I have found. You know, so thank you for that.
Yeah, that's my design philosophy. So, thank you.
You, my friend, you've ruined me. So,
He does that to a lot of people.
Yeah.
no, in all honesty, man, you know, it's like that moment that I had, you know, that I explained, you know, where I was genuinely in fear. It has come full circle, and it's like when I step into a Volti room, when I hear a rig like this, I'm home. You know, it's like it's the reason that I got into hi-fi. It takes me back to that moment of that experience of hearing something for the very first time. You're going, finally, you know, finally.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
man, I can't thank you enough, because it's really been one of the things that I want to do everything that I possibly can and talk to as many people as I can and say, don't like it because I say that of my experience. Just go and experience it.
Right.
Just go and sit down and
Yeah.
listen for yourself. And if you don't like it, that's cool. You might be an electrostatic guy or what, and that's fine. But there might be another Ron out there that's going to sit down in that chair, and he's going to hear St. James Infirmary for the first time,
And get that connection.
and he's going to be scared.
Yeah.